Hi, I'm going to try to do a video today showing you some of my tips and tweaks for wrapping a newborn. I've been wrapping for several years before having this baby, but I found wrapping a 2 or 3 or 4-day-old baby, there are some tweaks that I didn't really think about before I was doing it myself. My middle daughter, I didn't start wrapping until she was about a month old, so it was a little bit different than a brand new newborn. I'm going to start with a woven wrap. It's solid colored, so it maybe looks a little bit like a stretchy, but it's not. It's a woven. There's a little give to the fabric, but it doesn't stretch like a Moby, and it has hemmed rails. I'm not going to go over the ins and outs of all of the wrapping how-to. I'm just going to show you my tips, so I'm going to do this part quick. Here's my middle marker at my chest. I'm going to pass the ends over my shoulders. I like to hold on to the top rail so I know it's not twisted. And then when I end up here, I like to take a minute to find my middle markers because they usually shift on me a little bit. This one has a marker at the top and a marker at the bottom, which is helpful. And then feed it over my shoulders. And snug it up. Okay, so one of the first tweaks that I kind of was using before is to make sure that my passes are nice and spread out before I start. So I usually spread them down my arm, and then I kind of gather up over my shoulder. I like them starting on top of my shoulder, but I like to know that I have my rails on the outside and where everything is. So it just takes a second, but it definitely helps. The other thing that really helps, especially with a newborn, is to make sure that when I start this carry, this is going to be a front wrap cross carry, the pass that he slides into is going to be very snug. There's almost not going to be enough room for him, but that really helps to provide the support that he needs without me having to have 6 hands to hold him. So as you can see, it's really tight at the bottom. I can just kind of get my hand in a little bit looser at top. The other tweak that I love is to kind of roll something soft into the top for his head. So I find it easiest to actually start with a fold there. So it's up high, I'm going to fold it down so I can have a little bit of extra space there to fold in a burp rag or a washcloth to make it softer. He also does not need the full width of this because he's small. I'm going to take my newborn. He is just about 10 days old. I'm going to put him up on my shoulder, and then what I'm going to do is reach all the way through this pass and grab those feet and kind of guide them down. So now I'm holding him with my inside hand under his bottom and kind of guiding his feet while my outside hand works on sliding up that pass. And then the hardest thing for me with him is getting him to kind of put those feet down at the bottom because he's still pretty tiny and curled up. So once I pop those feet through, I don't want to make him extend his legs more than he would find comfortable, but I do want to make sure that I get a good seat for him. So I'm going to try to find both of those feet and kind of gently pull those legs down a little bit and have him upright. He's rooting like crazy, so I'm going to try to give him a pacifier and see if that'll work for a minute. Then I'm going to make sure his arms are tucked in. Now this is where it helps to have it snug to start with because he's already got a little bit of support through here. The way that I make a seat for an older child is to go between the legs and my body and pull up. I find that with him that's a little bit more pull, a little bit more oomph than I need. So I usually just gather the slack at the bottom and tuck it underneath him. Try to make sure his knees are up nice and high in his normal position. You dropped your bank. There you go. His knees are up nice and high in his normal kind of newborn tuck, and then I just tuck it right under his bottom. Now I definitely have more slack up here than I need, so I'm going to start to tighten. I'm going to pull out and back and tighten through as I go, strand by strand, all the way down. And now that side feels pretty snug, and I'm just going to hold it under his bottom. And I'm going to do this side. Now I don't want this top rail to be super tight because I'm going to roll it over something, but I definitely want this part through his upper spine to be tight. So I'm going to really give that part an extra tug. And I don't need the top rail because I'm going to wrap something soft in it to be super tight. So I'm going to give him a little bit of extra slack there for now. So now this feels pretty snug to me. And then this is a wrap that is wide, but it bunches nice and skinny, which works really well for a newborn. Before I pass it under his knees, you can kind of see he's in a nice squat. I'm going to adjust that a little bit as I need to. But I'm just going to kind of tuck and cross. I like to make the X first, and then pull these passes just under his feet. And then I'm going to tie a double knot as I find my shirt, a double knot behind me. Okay, so now the next little bit here is just tweaking his positioning. So his legs may be a little bit wider spread than I would like them. So I'm going to reach in, just kind of pull him up. I'm not going to push up his, I'm going to push up his knees a little bit. I'm not going to force him to do anything. I'm just going to kind of allow his knees to pull up where they normally would be if he wasn't in a carrier. His bottom is here, his knee is here. So you can see his knees are higher than his bottom, even though he's a little guy. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this folded down top rail, and I'm going to use a washcloth or a burp rag, and I'm just going to fold it and pop it in. And I've been experimenting with cloths of different thickness just to figure out what works. I know that ideally if I can have this top rail that's nice and padded now be right at his ear, it will give him a little head support without me having to cover his head. Okay, so now comes the most important newborn tweak now that he's in. I need to make sure that he has a lot of support through his upper spine, because I need to make sure that his spine is pressed against my body so that his chin stays up. I want to always make sure that his chin is up and I can fit a couple fingers underneath. It can be a little hard with a floppy newborn to achieve this, even if you know what you're doing as a wrapper. So that's why, first of all, I start with not too much slack, because he's in a pretty good position right here now. He kind of looks like a J already. He's got a pretty straight upper spine and a curved lower spine, and that J is what I'm looking for. Right now his chin is up. There have definitely been times when I was wrapping him when I ended up with him a little bit more slumped than I wanted. So rather than having to rewrap, what I would do is I lean forward, kind of encourage his head to fall up like that. So now I have him pressed against me tightly. And while I'm still holding him against me with my hands, I'm going to just feed some of that slack from that portion of the wrap under my arm. And then it's going to come over my shoulder. It can take a little trial and error to find that slack, but once you kind of know where you're looking. So I'm going to feed it under my arm, and it's going to come up over my shoulder. And then that snugs up that top portion even more. Now I've got this little bit of a gap, which is fine, because I'm going to cheat. And I'm just going to keep pulling and keep pulling and keep pulling until it comes underneath his leg. So now the bubble's all the way down here, and I can retie if I want, or I can just kind of fold it under. And if I fold it under, and I'm not doing too much moving and he's not too heavy, it's usually enough just to keep that slack where I want it, which is down here and not up here. I can do that as many times as I need to. If I'm wearing him and he settles in and I find extra slack, I can do that again. Again, I just lean forward, I press him against me, which automatically, as you can see, pushes his chin up. And then I feed that slack under one arm or the other, whichever one is easiest to find, and pull it back over my shoulder. Again, if you find like extra slack bubbles and you're not happy with them, you can go ahead and just feed them underneath and tuck and roll. When I look at him, and it's hard to see from another person's vantage point, but when I look down, his face is up. I can see his entire face and nose, and I know I can get a finger between his chin and his chest. He's got his chin typed up, and if he pulled it down, I would try to kind of re-tip it up there for him. And then this rail is going to come up nice and high on his head, just about to ear level. And then where his face is, I try to tuck it a little bit lower, so I know that he's got plenty of air circulating. So now, without having to cover his head, he's got head support. So I can lean forward in a reasonable way without him flopping over. If I wanted to, I could certainly pull this inner rail here and spread, and he would end up with a little extra head support. But I find that around the house, with me being postpartum, he doesn't need that extra warmth usually, even though it's cold outside. If we were outside walking around, I may use that for a little bit of extra warmth. I'm sorry for the length of this video. It's definitely longer than I would like it to be, but sometimes these newborns take a little bit more time than you expect to wrap. If you look around back, you'll see my passes hopefully are fairly well spread. I can always reach up and spread them more if I need to, and that provides a lot of support for my back. And when he's nice and tight and snug in this carry, I can wear him for a long time without any discomfort, even though he is rapidly gaining weight. So thanks, I hope that helps some people. And again, this is my 10-day-old newborn in a woven wrap.